Dr. Zixtel pressed her crystalline hands against the observation deck window. Her home world of Vorthak Prime sparkled like a jewel in the distance. She had been away for 6 months, studying the ancient ruins on the small moon below their research station. The work was important, but she missed the singing crystals of her homeland. "Doctor, we have found something," called her assistant. A furry creature named Keptra, from the Molari system. His 4 arms moved quickly over the control panels, his excitement clear in the way his whiskers twitched. Zixtel walked over to the main screen. The ruins they had been studying for months suddenly made sense. The symbols were not just decoration, they were a warning. "These people knew about the Devourers," she whispered. The room fell silent. Every species in the galaxy knew that name. The Devourers were machines that ate entire worlds. They had been quiet for 50 years, but the fear never went away. Her team gathered around the screen. There were 12 different species working on the station. The Vorthak with their crystal bodies, the furry Molari with their 4 arms, the tall ethereals who glowed with soft light, and 9 other races. They had all joined the coalition because they believed in peace and learning. War was something they had left behind long ago. The warning was clear now. This moon had once been part of a great civilization. The Devourers had come and destroyed everything. Only these ruins remained, hidden deep under the surface. "We must report this to the coalition," said Elder Than, an ethereal whose light pulsed with worry. "If the Devourers are returning to this system—" He never finished his sentence. The station shook violently. Emergency lights flashed red. The main computer spoke in its calm voice. "Hull breach detected. Unknown ships approaching. All personnel to emergency stations." Zixtel ran to the command center with her team. The main screen showed space around their station. Dark ships were appearing from nowhere. Their surfaces black as night, they moved like hunters, surrounding the station. "Devourer vessels confirmed," reported the station commander, a 6-legged Nexari named Commander Velden. 12 ships, all heavily armed. "They are not responding to any communications." The first energy blast hit their shields. The station shook again, harder this time. More blasts followed. The peaceful coalition ships around the station tried to fight back, but their weapons were designed to disable, not destroy. The Devourer ships absorbed the energy and kept coming. Shields at 60% and falling, someone reported. Fear filled the command center. In 3,000 years of coalition history, no one had ever defeated the Devourers in direct combat. When they came, you could only run or hide, but there was nowhere to run. The Devourer ships were too fast, and the research station could not move quickly. Zixtel watched their beautiful bioships being torn apart. These ships were grown, not built. Living creatures that housed their crews with love and care. Seeing them die was like watching friends being murdered. "Emergency message to all coalition worlds," Commander Velden ordered. "Tell them the Devourers have returned. Tell them we are sorry we could not do more." End quote. The shields failed. The Devourer ships moved closer. Through the windows, Zixtel could see their black hulls covered in strange symbols. She had studied ancient languages for years, but these symbols hurt to look at. They seemed to move on their own, whispering things she did not want to understand. Boarding pods shot out from the Devourer ships. They crashed into the station's hull like bullets. The sound of metal tearing filled the air. Emergency doors slammed shut, but everyone knew it would not matter. The Devourers never left survivors. "Doctor," whispered Keptra, "what do we do?" Zixtel looked at her young assistant. His 4 arms shook with fear. Around the command center, beings from 12 different worlds stood together, facing the end. They had dedicated their lives to learning and peace. None of them knew how to fight. She thought about her home world and the crystal songs she would never hear again. She thought about all the knowledge they had gathered, all the discoveries they had made. The Devourers would destroy it all and add nothing to the galaxy but emptiness. The emergency communication system crackled to life. "This is Dr. Zeke's tell of Research Station Harmony's Edge," she said, her voice carrying across space to every coalition world. "The Devourers have found us. We have perhaps minutes left. We send this message not as a call for rescue, but as a warning. They are returning. Prepare yourselves. Remember us. Remember what we tried to build here." She was about to turn off the transmitter when Keptra grabbed her arm with two of his hands. "Doctor, wait," he said. "There is one more signal on the emergency channel." "What do you mean?" "The humans. They heard us." Zeke's tell felt her crystal body grow cold. The humans. 3 months ago, they had made contact with the Coalition. They were young, having only discovered faster-than-light travel a few decades ago. The Coalition had welcomed them carefully. There was something different about humans. Something that made the other species nervous. "Patch them through," she said. A voice came through the speakers, speaking in the rough human language. "Coalition Station. This is Admiral Chen of the Seoul Defense Fleet. We have received your distress call. Help is coming. Hold your position." Commander Vell then stared at the communications panel. "Admiral Chen. This is a Devourer attack. Our military estimates 12 ships. Possibly more. We appreciate your offer. But there is nothing you can do. Save your own people." There was silence for a moment. Then the human voice came back. And there was something in it that Zeke's tell had never heard before. It was not fear or sadness. It was something much more dangerous. "Commander, we do not abandon people who call for help. Third, expeditionary force is moving to your position. Estimated arrival time: 4 hours. Keep your heads down." The transmission ended. Around the command center, beings from 12 worlds looked at each other in confusion. The humans were coming to fight the Devourers. It was either very brave or completely insane. Outside, the Devourer boarding parties were cutting through the hull. The station shuddered as explosions echoed through the corridors. But now, there was something else. A small hope that perhaps someone was coming who might be able to help. Zeke's tell did not know what humans could do that the Coalition could not. But as she listened to the sounds of the Devourers breaking into their home, she found herself hoping that whatever made the other species nervous about humans might be exactly what they needed. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching the stars stretch into lines as they jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind her, the 3rd Expeditionary Force followed, 12 ships carrying 3,000 of Earth's finest soldiers, sailors, and marines. "Admiral," said Captain Torres, her tactical officer, "Coalition High Command is sending us messages. They want us to turn back." Chen did not look away from the stars. "What are they saying?" "Standard diplomatic language. They appreciate our gesture, but cannot ask us to sacrifice ourselves for their people. They say the Devourers have never been defeated, and we should preserve our forces for Earth's defense." Chen finally turned around. Her bridge crew was watching her, waiting for orders. These were people who had joined the Space Navy when humanity first reached the stars. They knew what it meant to be far from home, facing the unknown. "Captain Torres, send a message back to Coalition High Command. Tell them we appreciate their concern, but we make our own decisions about who we help." She walked to the tactical display showing their route to the Kepler system, 4 hours at maximum speed. 4 hours to reach a fight that every other species in the galaxy was afraid to join. "Ma'am," asked Lieutenant Hayes, the youngest officer on the bridge, "what do we know about these Devourers?" Chen pulled up the files they had received from Coalition intelligence. The information was not encouraging. The Devourers were machines, possibly controlled by artificial intelligence. They consumed entire planets for raw materials. They had been active for over 1,000 years, and in that time, no Coalition force had ever defeated them in battle. "They are efficient," Chen said simply. "They attack in overwhelming numbers, use advanced technology, and never leave survivors. The Coalition tries to fight them with minimum casualties and precise strikes. It does not work." "What will we do differently?" asked Captain Torres. Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Captain, the Coalition species evolved past warfare. They had thousands of years of peace to develop philosophy, art, and science. They forgot how to kill. She pointed to the tactical display. Humans evolved differently. We had world wars with millions of dead. We had nuclear weapons when we could barely fly. We spent 10,000 years learning better ways to hurt each other. The bridge was quiet. Everyone understood what she was saying. Humanity had joined a galaxy of peaceful species, but they had not become peaceful themselves. They had simply learned to control their violence. "Send word to all ships," Chen ordered. "Colonel Rodriguez needs to brief his Marines. We will be fighting an enemy that has never faced humans before." Down in the transport ship Normandy, Colonel Marcus Rodriguez gathered his company commanders. The briefing room was packed with soldiers in combat gear. These were not peacekeepers or explorers. They were warriors, trained for one purpose: to close with the enemy and destroy them. "Listen up," Rodriguez said. "We are going to fight something called the Devourers. They are machines, probably controlled by computers. They think like computers, which means they think logically." He activated the holographic display showing Devourer ships and tactics. They use overwhelming firepower, superior numbers, and advanced technology. They expect their enemies to surrender when the odds become impossible. Sergeant Williams, a veteran of the Mars Rebellion, raised her hand. "Sir, what do we do when the odds are impossible?" Rodriguez grinned. "Sergeant, we cheat. Computers think in terms of acceptable losses and logical outcomes. Humans think in terms of acceptable risks and impossible victories." He changed the display to show human weapons and tactics. The Coalition uses energy weapons designed to disable enemy ships without destroying them completely. They try to capture technology and avoid casualties. We use nuclear warheads, kinetic penetrators, and electromagnetic pulse weapons. We do not care about capturing their technology. We care about making sure they never threaten anyone again. The Marines looked at each other. They understood. This would not be a police action or a peacekeeping mission. This would be war. The kind of war that humans had been perfecting for millennia. "Sir," asked Captain Murphy, "what about the civilians on the station?" "We save them if we can," Rodriguez replied. "But our primary mission is to eliminate the Devourer threat completely. Sometimes, you have to accept short-term losses for long-term victory." Back on the research station, Dr. Zixtel monitored the communications channels. The Devourers had broken through the outer hull and were moving through the corridors systematically. They were not in a hurry. They never were. They knew that no help was coming, but she could hear something else on the emergency frequencies. Human military communications, speaking in their harsh language with terms she did not understand. "Bravo team. Confirm nuclear payload armed." "Roger. Payload armed and ready." "Charlie Squadron. Target those boarding pods with kinetic strikes." "Copy. Switching to armor-piercing rounds." The words meant nothing to her, but the tone was clear. The humans were not talking like people facing an impossible situation. They were talking like people planning a hunting trip. Commander Vell then joined her at the communications station. His 6 legs clicked nervously on the metal floor. "Doctor, I have been reading the files on human military history. I think I understand why the other species were nervous about them." "What did you find?" "They have had over 400 major wars in their recorded history. They have weapons that can destroy their entire planet. They have military academies that exist only to study better ways to fight." Zixtel felt her crystal body shiver. "That sounds terrible." "Yes," Vell then agreed. "But doctor, they are also the only species that has ever volunteered to fight the Devourers." Through the station's walls, they could hear the sound of cutting tools as the Devourers worked their way deeper. The machines were methodical, efficient, unstoppable. They had been conquering the galaxy for 1,000 years. But in 4 hours, they would meet something they had never encountered before. They would meet a species that had turned warfare into an art form, that measured victory not in captured territory but in eliminated enemies. The Devourers had studied every Coalition species. They knew exactly how civilized beings fought. They had never fought anyone who was not civilized. "Doctor," whispered Keptra, "do you think the humans can really help us?" Zeextel listened to the human military chatter on the communications system. The voices were calm, professional, deadly. These were not the voices of people hoping for the best. These were the voices of people who expected to win. "I do not know if they can help us," she said quietly. "But I think the Devourers are about to learn why the rest of the galaxy was afraid of humans." The station shook as another section of hull was breached. But now, instead of just fear, there was something else in the air. For the first time in galactic history, the Devourers were sailing toward a fight with someone who might actually fight back. In 3 hours and 47 minutes, the machines would discover what 10,000 years of human warfare could produce when unleashed on an enemy that showed no mercy. The hunt was about to become a war. The Devourer ships detected the approaching human fleet when they were still 2 hours away. The machine intelligence analyzed the new contacts with cold efficiency. 12 ships, primitive fusion engines, basic armor plating. No threat to the current operation. The analysis was wrong. Admiral Chen watched the tactical display as they dropped out of faster-than-light speed. The Devourer ships hung in space around the research station like black spiders. She could see the damage to the Coalition vessels. Beautiful bioships lay dead in space, their organic hulls torn open. "Admiral," reported Captain Torres, "enemy ships are moving to intercept. They are not attempting communication." "Good," Chen replied. "Neither are we. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Execute Battle Plan Alpha. Show them what Earth sends to war." The human fleet spread out into attack formation. Unlike coalition tactics, which emphasized protecting valuable ships and minimizing losses, the humans positioned their smaller vessels ahead of the larger ones. They were using their destroyers and frigates as shields for the heavy cruisers. The Devourers opened fire first. Energy beams lanced through space, designed to disable enemy ships without destroying valuable technology. They expected the humans to return fire with similar precision weapons. Instead, the human response was nuclear fire. The destroyer UES Sparta launched 6 nuclear torpedoes and immediately accelerated toward the nearest Devourer ship. The machine intelligence calculated the human ship's trajectory and determined it would be destroyed before reaching effective range. This was acceptable. The calculation was wrong. The Sparta was not trying to survive the attack. It was trying to get close enough to hurt the enemy before it died. The nuclear torpedoes struck the Devourer ship's shields and detonated. The electromagnetic pulse from the explosions overloaded the machine's sensors. In that moment of blindness, the Sparta fired its entire load of kinetic penetrators and rammed the Devourer vessel at full speed. Both ships exploded in a ball of nuclear fire. Dr. Zixtel watched the explosion through the station's sensors. Her crystalline hands shook as she realized what had happened. The humans had deliberately sacrificed one of their ships to destroy an enemy vessel. No coalition species would ever consider such a tactic. "They killed themselves to hurt the enemy," she whispered. Commander Velden's 6 legs clicked rapidly on the floor. "Doctor, I am reading human communications. They are not mourning their lost ship. They are celebrating the successful attack." More human ships were engaging the Devourers now. The frigates, UES Lexington and UES Yorktown, approached another enemy vessel from different angles. When the Devourer ship focused its weapons on the Lexington, the Yorktown struck from behind with electromagnetic pulse weapons. The Devourer ship's systems failed. Its weapons went silent. Its engines stopped. It hung helpless in space for exactly 12 seconds before the humans fired a spread of nuclear warheads into its hull. "Target destroyed," came the calm voice over the radio. "Moving to next target." The machine intelligence tried to adapt. The Devourers had consumed hundreds of civilizations, absorbing their technologies and tactics. But every species they had fought followed logical patterns. They protected their valuable assets, minimized casualties, and sought victory through superior technology. The humans were doing the opposite of everything the machines expected. When a Devourer ship moved to attack the human flagship, 2 smaller vessels immediately moved to intercept. They did not try to disable the enemy. They did not attempt to board and capture technology. They simply opened fire with every weapon they possessed, and continued firing until both ships were destroyed. "Admiral," called Captain Torres from the Indomitable's bridge, "we are receiving tactical data from the station. The Devourers have breached the hull and are moving through the corridors. Send in the Marines," Chen ordered. "Colonel Rodriguez, your people are needed inside that station." The transport ship Normandy accelerated toward the research station. Devourer ships moved to intercept. But they were now fighting a different kind of battle. The remaining human fleet surrounded them in a sphere of destruction, firing nuclear weapons from all directions at once. Colonel Rodriguez stood in the Normandy's drop bay with his Marines. Through the viewports, he could see the battle raging in space. Ships were dying on both sides, but the humans were winning through sheer aggression and acceptable losses. "Listen up," he called to his soldiers. "We are going into a station full of scared civilians and killer machines. The machines have been killing for 1,000 years. We have been killing for 10,000 years. Let us show them the difference." The Normandy's drop pods launched toward the station. Each pod contained 12 Marines in full combat armor. The Devourer boarding parties inside the station detected the incoming humans and moved to intercept them. It was another mistake. The Marines did not land gently and establish defensive positions like coalition peacekeepers. They crashed through the station's hull with explosive charges and immediately went on the attack. They moved through the corridors like wolves, hunting in packs, communicating with hand signals and tactical systems. Sergeant Williams kicked down the door to the station's medical bay. Inside, she found 3 Devourer machines standing over wounded coalition personnel. The machines turned to face her, their sensors analyzing her weapons and armor. She did not give them time to analyze. Her assault rifle fired armor-piercing rounds at full automatic. The first machine fell with its chest torn open. The second machine raised its weapon, and she grenaded it. The third machine tried to retreat, and she shot it in the back. "Medical bay secure," she reported. 27 wounded coalition personnel alive. This was happening throughout the station. The Devourers had expected to face coalition security forces, who would try to disable attackers and take prisoners. Instead, they faced human Marines who shot first and never bothered with questions. Dr. Zixtel huddled with her research team in the main laboratory. Through the walls, she could hear the battle moving closer. First came the sound of Devourer weapons, precise energy bursts designed to kill efficiently. Then came the sound of human weapons, explosions, and automatic gunfire that seemed to go on forever. The laboratory door exploded inward. A Devourer machine stepped through the smoke, its red sensors scanning for targets. Behind Dr. Zixtel, Keptra whimpered in fear. The machine raised its weapon, then its head disappeared in a spray of metal fragments. Colonel Rodriguez stepped through the smoke, his rifle still smoking. Behind him came 2 Marines, checking corners and watching for more enemies. They moved like hunters, silent and deadly. "Ma'am," Rodriguez said to Dr. Zixtel, "we are here to get you out. Stay close and do exactly what we say." "Colonel," she managed to whisper, "how did you destroy them so quickly?" Rodriguez looked at the dead Devourer machine. "Doctor, these things have been fighting civilized opponents for 1,000 years. They know how to fight people who follow rules." He picked up his rifle and checked his ammunition. "The problem is, we do not fight civilized. We fight to win." Outside in space, the last Devourer ship was burning. The human fleet had lost 4 vessels and 600 crew members. The Devourers had lost everything. Admiral Chen stood on her bridge, watching the wreckage. Around them, the surviving coalition ships were sending messages of amazement and gratitude. In 30 minutes, humanity had accomplished what the galaxy's greatest military minds said was impossible. "Admiral," reported Captain Torres, "all Devourer vessels destroyed. Station secure. Casualties are being evacuated." Chen nodded. Through the viewports, she could see human ships moving among the wreckage, making sure no Devourer technology remained functional. They were not trying to capture or study the enemy equipment. They were destroying it completely. "Send a message to Coalition High Command," she ordered. "Tell them the station is secure and the devourer threat has been eliminated. Ma'am, Torres asked quietly, what do we tell them about our tactics? Chen looked at the tactical display, showing the debris of 12 devourer ships. For 1,000 years, these machines had been unstoppable. Today, they had learned that there was something in the galaxy more dangerous than they were. Tell them, she said, that when someone cries for help, Earth answers. And when Earth answers, we do not lose. The smoke was clearing from the battle zone. In the silence that followed, the galaxy began to understand that everything had changed. The age of devourer dominance was over. The age of human protection had begun. The medical bay of the research station smelled like smoke and fear. Dr. Zixtel sat on an examination table, while a human medic checked her crystal structure for damage. Around the room, coalition personnel from 12 different species were being treated for injuries and shock. Doctor, you have some microfractures in your left arm, the medic said. Nothing serious, but you should rest it for a few days. Zixtel barely heard him. She was watching Colonel Rodriguez through the doorway. He was standing in the corridor, talking quietly into his communicator while his Marines secured the station. His voice was calm, professional, like he was discussing the weather instead of the complete destruction of 12 devourer ships. Colonel, she called out. Rodriguez looked over and walked into the medical bay. Yes, doctor? May I ask you something? Rodriguez nodded and pulled up a chair. Up close, Zixtel could see the scars on his face and hands. This was a man who had seen combat before. Many times. How? She asked simply. How did you do what no one else could do in 1,000 years? Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. Doctor, what do you know about Earth's history? Very little. The coalition files say you achieved peace about 50 years ago. We achieved peace by becoming very good at war, Rodriguez said. Do you know what the Second World War was? Zixtel shook her head. 60 million dead in 6 years. We learned to build weapons that could destroy entire cities. We learned to fight on land, sea, air, and space. We learned that sometimes, to save innocent lives, you have to be willing to do terrible things to bad people. He gestured toward the corridor where his Marines were working. These machines, the devourers, they think like computers. Everything is logic and efficiency. They expect their enemies to act rationally, to preserve their own lives and minimize casualties. That sounds reasonable, Zixtel said. It is reasonable. But humans learned long ago that reasonable does not always work against unreasonable enemies. Sometimes you have to be more violent than your opponent. Sometimes you have to be willing to lose everything to make sure the other side loses more. Zixtel thought about this. In her crystal structure, the concept felt wrong. Her people had evolved past such thinking millions of years ago. Violence was inefficient, wasteful, primitive, but violence had just saved her life and the lives of everyone on the station. Colonel, were you afraid? Rodriguez smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Doctor, fear is useful. Fear keeps you alive. But fear cannot be allowed to stop you from doing what needs to be done. Across the station, Commander Velden was speaking with Admiral Chen in the command center. The human admiral stood looking at the damage reports, her face showing no emotion. Admiral Chen, Velden said carefully, on behalf of the coalition, I want to thank you for your assistance. Your people saved lives today. Chen turned to face him. Commander, we did not save lives today. We ended a threat. There is a difference. I do not understand. Chen activated the main display, showing the wreckage of the devourer ships. Commander, your people tried to fight the devourers with minimum casualties and precise strikes. You wanted to disable their ships and capture their technology. You wanted to win cleanly. Velden's 6 legs clicked nervously. Yes. That is how civilized beings conduct warfare. And that is why you lost, Chen said bluntly. We did not try to capture anything. We did not try to minimize our casualties. We destroyed them completely, making sure that not one machine escaped to report back to their main force. She pointed to the tactical display. Right now, The Devourer Collective has no idea what happened here. They sent 12 ships to harvest this system, and those ships simply disappeared. They have no data about our weapons, our tactics, or our capabilities. That gives us an advantage, Vel then realized. That gives us everything, Chen corrected. War is not about being fair or civilized. War is about winning so completely that your enemy cannot threaten anyone ever again. In the research laboratory, Dr. Zixtel was reviewing the security footage of the battle. She watched human ships deliberately crash into Devourer vessels. She watched Marines move through corridors filled with death and destruction without hesitation. She watched soldiers sacrifice themselves to save people they had never met. Her assistant, Keptra, sat beside her, his forearms trembling slightly. Doctor, I have been reading about human military tactics. Did you know they have a concept called acceptable losses? What does that mean? It means they decide in advance how many of their own people they are willing to lose to achieve victory. They plan for their soldiers to die. The firsting with on, Zixtel felt her crystal structure shiver. No coalition species would ever think such thoughts. Life was precious. Every individual mattered. The idea of deliberately sending people to die was horrifying, but those same people had just saved 12 species from extinction. Doctor, Keptra continued, I am scared. Of the Devourers? No. Of the humans. Zixtel understood. The coalition had welcomed humanity into their peaceful galaxy thinking they could teach them to be civilized. But today had proven that humans were not civilized in any way the coalition understood. They were something far more dangerous. They were effective. A communication screen activated, showing Coalition High Command. The Council of 12 appeared. Representatives of every major species looking tired and worried. Elder Than spoke for them all. Dr. Zixtel, we have received Admiral Chen's report. We are grateful for humanity's assistance. They saved us, Zixtel said simply. Yes. And that creates a problem. Elder Than's light pulsed with uncertainty. Doctor, in 30 minutes, humanity accomplished what our greatest military minds said was impossible. They destroyed a Devourer force completely, with 0 enemy survivors. That is good news. Is it? Asked another council member. A tall Nexari with worried eyes. Doctor, we have spent 3,000 years building a civilization based on peace, understanding, and minimal violence. Today we have learned that all of our efforts were meaningless against a truly determined enemy. Zixtel looked around at her rescued colleagues. Beings from 12 worlds, who were alive because humans had been willing to fight and die for strangers. Council members, she said carefully. I believe we need to ask ourselves a difficult question. What is more important? Maintaining our civilized principles, or staying alive to practice them? The council members looked at each other. This was the question that would define the future of galactic civilization. Dr. Zixtel, Elder Than said finally, we want you to compile a complete report on human military capabilities and tactics. We need to understand exactly what we are dealing with. Are they our allies or our concern? That, said Elder Than, is what we need to decide. After the communication ended, Zixtel sat alone in her laboratory. Through the window, she could see human ships patrolling the area, making sure no Devourer forces remained. The ships moved with purpose and deadly efficiency. She thought about the galaxy before today. Peaceful, civilized, safe within certain boundaries. The Devourers had been a known threat, but one that could be avoided or managed. Now everything had changed. The galaxy had protectors, but those protectors were predators themselves. The question was simple. Could the coalition trust humanity to protect them without eventually becoming a threat to them? As she watched the human patrol ships, Dr. Zixtel realized that the galaxy was about to learn something that Earth had known for millennia. Sometimes, the greatest threat to peace is the unwillingness to fight for it. The coalition had been saved by violence. Now they had to decide what to do with their violent saviors. Outside, human Marines continued their work, efficient and professional. They did not celebrate their victory or mourn their losses. They simply prepared for the next battle. Because on Earth, there was always a next battle. 6 months after the Battle of Harmony's Edge, Dr. Zyxtel stood before the Coalition Assembly on the diplomatic station Alpha 7. Representatives from all 12 member species filled the Great Hall, their attention focused on her final report about humanity's role in galactic affairs. Behind her, holographic displays showed the results of 6 months of human military operations. 17 star systems cleared of Devourer presence. 43 enemy ships destroyed with 0 survivors. 3 entire Devourer staging areas eliminated completely. The Devourer threat, which had limited galactic expansion for over 1,000 years, was gone. Honored representatives, Zyxtel began, her crystalline voice carrying clearly through the chamber. I have spent 6 months studying human military doctrine, tactics, and philosophy. What I have learned changes everything we thought we knew about warfare and protection. She activated the first display, showing human military training facilities on Earth and her colonies. Humans do not train soldiers to keep peace. They train soldiers to end wars permanently. Every human military action follows one principle: complete elimination of the threat. Elder Than, representing the ethereals, pulsed with soft light. Dr. Zyxtel, you are saying they do not fight to achieve political goals or capture territory. No, Elder Than. They fight to make sure their enemies can never threaten anyone again. It is a concept they call total victory. The chamber buzzed with nervous conversation. For 3,000 years, coalition warfare had been about minimum casualties and diplomatic solutions. The idea of fighting until an enemy was completely destroyed felt alien and frightening. Doctor, called Representative Klix, a 6-armed Nexari, what are the implications for coalition security? Zyxtel changed the display to show current force deployments. Human ships now patrolled the outer systems, protecting coalition territory from threats that might emerge from unexplored space. The implications are simple, she said. We are safer than we have ever been in recorded history. Human protection has allowed us to expand into systems that were previously too dangerous to explore. Trade routes that were restricted by Devourer presence are now open. Scientific expeditions can travel to areas that were forbidden for centuries. At what cost? Asked another representative. This was the question Zyxtel had been dreading. She activated a new display showing human casualty reports. In 6 months of operations, humanity had lost 14 ships and over 2,000 personnel. They had never retreated, never negotiated, and never left an enemy alive to fight another day. The cost is measured in human lives, she said quietly. They accept losses that we would consider catastrophic. In the Battle of the Kepler Nebula, they lost an entire squadron to eliminate a single Devourer command ship. When I asked Colonel Rodriguez why, he said that one command ship could coordinate attacks on dozens of worlds. The chamber fell silent. The concept of deliberately sacrificing lives for strategic advantage was beyond coalition understanding. Doctor, Elder Than said carefully, are we witnessing the protection of galactic civilization, or its replacement by human military rule? Before Zyxtel could answer, the chamber doors opened. General Rodriguez walked in, still wearing his combat uniform. Behind him came Admiral Chen and a small group of human officers. They had been invited to address the assembly directly. Honored representatives, General Rodriguez said, his voice carrying easily through the Great Hall. Doctor, Zyxtel has given you facts about human military operations. Now let me give you the truth about human intentions. He walked to the center of the chamber, standing where every representative could see him clearly. 6 months ago, you sent a distress call into space. Every civilized species in the galaxy heard that call. Only humanity answered. We did not come to your aid because we wanted to rule you. We came because it was the right thing to do. We did not expect payment, territory, or political control. We expected to do our job and go home. Representative Klix leaned forward. General, what is your job? To make sure that when peaceful people call for help, someone answers. To make sure that when predators threaten the innocent, they meet predators who are more dangerous than they are. Rodriguez activated his own holographic display, showing the current state of galactic security. Representatives, you have built something beautiful here. 12 species working together in peace, exploring the galaxy, advancing science and philosophy. That civilization is worth protecting. But protection requires protectors, and protectors cannot be civilized in the same way as those they protect. We do the violent work, so that you do not have to. Elder Than's light pulsed with concern. General Rodriguez, how do we know that you will not eventually become a threat to the very civilization you claim to protect? Rodriguez smiled, and for the first time since Zixtel had met him, it was a warm expression, rather than a dangerous one. Elder Than, that is the right question to ask. The answer is simple, because we go home. He gestured to the human officers behind him. Every one of these people has families on Earth or the human colonies. They have lives they want to return to. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We want to make sure the galaxy is safe enough for our children to explore. When the fighting is done, we go home. When new threats emerge, we come back. This is what humans do. We fight so others do not have to. The Assembly voted that day to establish the Terran Protection Protocols. Humanity would serve as the Coalition's military arm, with full authority to respond to external threats. In return, human colonies would receive full Coalition membership, access to advanced technology, and support for peaceful expansion. It was not a perfect arrangement. Many Coalition species remained nervous about their violent protectors, but it was an arrangement that worked. 3 years later, Dr. Zixtel served as the Coalition's first ambassador to Earth. She stood in the observation deck of the space station orbiting Luna, watching human children play in the artificial gravity. These children would grow up knowing that the galaxy was a safe place to explore. Ambassador, came a familiar voice behind her. She turned to see General Rodriguez, now wearing a civilian suit instead of military uniform. General Rodriguez, I thought you had retired. I did. I teach military history at the academy now. He joined her at the observation window. My students study Coalition tactics and philosophy. They need to understand what they are protecting. Do they understand? Some do. The smart ones realize that the goal is not to win wars. The goal is to make wars unnecessary. Quote, through the window, they could see Earth hanging in space like a blue jewel. It looked peaceful from this distance, but Zixtel knew that somewhere on that world, new soldiers were training for battles that might never come, ready to answer calls for help from people they had never met. General, she said, do you ever regret the path humanity chose? Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. Ambassador, my grandfather fought in the water wars on Mars. My father served in the first expeditions to Alpha Centauri. I fought the Devourers in 17 different systems. Each generation of my family has faced violence so that the next generation might know peace. That is the human way. We do not regret it because we know the alternative. An alarm sounded softly through the station. Both of them looked up as the emergency communication system activated. This is Deep Space Monitor Station Zeta. We are detecting unknown ships in the Orion sector. Configuration does not match any known species. They are not responding to communications and are moving toward inhabited systems. Request immediate assistance. Zixtel felt her crystal structure grow cold. New threats were always emerging in the galaxy. Before humanity, such calls meant evacuation, retreat, and hoping the unknown ships would leave peacefully. General, she began. Rodriguez was already reaching for his communicator. Admiral Chen, this is Rodriguez. I know you heard the call. What is the response time for the 7th Fleet? Admiral Chen's voice came back immediately. General, we can have ships in the Orion sector in 6 hours. Do we have permission to engage? Rodriguez looked at Zixtel. She was the Coalition's representative, with full authority to authorize military action. Ambassador, he said quietly, what are your orders? Zixtel thought about the children playing in the artificial gravity below. She thought about scientists working in laboratories across the galaxy. exploring and discovering without fear. She thought about 12 species living in peace because someone else was willing to fight for that peace. General Rodriguez, she said firmly, tell Admiral Chen that the coalition authorizes full military response. Rules of engagement are human discretion. Rodriguez spoke into his communicator. Admiral, you are authorized to engage with extreme prejudice. Show them what Earth sends to war. Through the station's communication system, they could hear the distant sounds of humanity responding to another call for help. Ships launching, weapons charging, soldiers preparing for battle. The galaxy was safe because somewhere in space, human ships were moving toward the unknown threat. They would emerge from the smoke and fire to answer another call for help. Because that was what humans did. Dr. Zixtel watched the stars and knew that as long as humanity stood guard, the coalition could continue building their civilization of peace and learning. Some species were meant to explore the universe, others were meant to protect it. Humanity had found their purpose among the stars, and the galaxy was safer for it. In the distance, she could see the running lights of human warships accelerating toward the Orion sector. Soon, whoever threatened the peace would learn what 10,000 years of warfare could produce when unleashed in defense of the innocent. The age of human protection continued, one answered call at a time.